Episode 68, Joseph Smith's Last Week. Welcome to the Hidden and Distorted History of the Church series, where we will be looking at the historical aspects of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormons. In this series, I will try and inform those unaware of the true facts of Mormon history. Recap. Last week, Joseph H. Jackson published startling disclosures in the Warsaw Signal, accusing Joseph Smith of several crimes. Meanwhile, Zena Huntington's journal revealed the Smiths' ties to Freemasonry and new revelations. On June 7th, William Law's Nauvoo Expositor exposed Smith's polygamy and political overreach. Smith convened the Nauvoo City Council to label the paper a public nuisance. Joseph ordered its destruction using the Nauvoo Legion. A judge issued arrest warrants for Smith and 17 others. But Nauvoo's own court dismissed the charges, while Smith himself presided the next day to absolve the rest. This week, a letter surfaced, allegedly from Joseph Smith, appointing James Strang as his prophetic successor. Meanwhile, the Nauvoo Neighbor rushed out an edition, insisting that the Expositor editors had fled Nauvoo voluntarily. As tensions escalated, Governor Thomas Ford personally traveled to Hancock County to confront the mounting allegations against Smith. In a desperate move, Joseph and Hyrum Smith, along with close allies, fled into Iowa, instructing William Clayton to destroy sensitive records. At the same time, Smith covertly ordered Major General Jonathan Dunham to mobilize the Nauvoo Legion and launch an armed assault on Carthage to rescue him. This is an episode you do not want to miss. Part 1. Strang Days for Nauvoo. On June 18, 1844, just days before Joseph Smith was killed, a letter postmarked from Nauvoo, Illinois, was mailed to James Strang in Burlington, Wisconsin Territory. The letter, whose U.S. postal record confirms its origin and date, claimed to appoint Strang to a leadership position within the church and suggested he was chosen by Smith as a prophetic successor. This document became central to Strang's later claims to leadership and the foundation of the Strangite movement. While the LDS Church and Brigham Young's followers quickly dismissed the letter as a forgery, no definitive physical evidence has ever disproven its authenticity, and the Nauvoo postmark lends it a degree of credibility that other succession claims often lack. However, scholars remain unconvinced. FAIR, an LDS apologetics organization, argues that there is no credible evidence Joseph Smith ever authored or dictated such a letter, and suggests the timing and content align too conveniently with Strang's ambitions. Lawrence Foster, a respected historian, explicitly wrote, "For these and a number of other complex reasons, Morgan concludes that the letter was probably a forgery by Strang. I have carefully examined the original letter of appointment and fully concur with Morgan's judgments." Here, Foster references the earlier research of Dale L. Morgan, whose deep dive into the letter's origins also concluded it was likely fabricated. Even the widely respected LDS historian D. Michael Quinn, after inspecting the original document himself, stated that he fully concurred with Morgan's judgments regarding its inauthenticity. Lucy Mack Smith wrote in 1846 that the 12 Brighamites have abused my son William and trampled upon my children. They have also treated me with contempt. The Lord's hand is in this to save the church. Now mark it, these men are not right. God has not sent them to lead this kingdom. I am satisfied that Joseph appointed J.J. Strang. It is verily so. FAIR respond to this with a statement made by Catherine Smith Salisbury, Joseph's sister, from 1886. I feel to write a few lines by way of explanation. In January, I received a letter asking for an explanation concerning my name being signed to a document or certificate in support of J.J. Strang being leader of the church, such certificate being found in the Strangite pamphlet, a thing I never heard of in my life until I received the letter from Elder Lewis. I now in truth declare that I never signed my name to such certificate or document, neither did I give my consent for anyone to sign it. I never knew anything about Strang or his work, nor heard of him for several years after I left Nauvoo. I do not believe that my mother, Lucy Smith, or my sisters, Lucy Milliken and Sophronia McClary, signed any such certificate. As for my husband, I know he looked forward to Joseph Smith taking his father's place. We based our strong reasons on my mother's teaching, as she was known to her grandson's calling. We all waited patiently for him to take his place. It is preposterous to think that Emma Smith, wife of my brother Joseph, would sign such certificate, when she knew of her son's blessing in Liberty Jail, and knew beyond a doubt that he would fill his father's place in God's own due time. Such was her testimony all the way through, so I say the whole thing was a forgery. Whoever the perpetrator was, his acts will surely be revealed sometime, as justice will prevail. I expect to meet this testimony before the judgment bar of God. The problem here is that Catherine Smith speaks only in terms of belief, not certainty. Her statement is an opinion, not a confirmation rooted in fact. Meanwhile, we know that William Smith was openly aligned with the Strangite movement before his eventual excommunication, which speaks volumes about the Smith family's early support for Strang. More importantly, not a single member of the Smith family, aside from Catherine, ever denied the authenticity of the letter appointing Strang, nor did they contradict the written accounts supporting his claim. Even Lucy Max Smith, the prophet's own mother, never rejected Strang's leadership. Silence from the rest of the family isn't just telling, it's damning. Despite the skepticism of modern scholars and apologists, Strang's followers considered the letter authentic and divinely inspired, fueling a breakaway movement that lasted for years. The letter remains one of the most mysterious and contested artifacts from the chaotic Latter-day Saint succession crisis. Part 2. Destruction of Press. In the immediate aftermath of the Nauvoo Expositor's destruction between June 10th and June 15th, William Law, Wilson Law, the Higbee brothers, and the Foster brothers fled Nauvoo under duress. Their departure was not a voluntary relocation, but a desperate escape from an increasingly volatile and lawless environment. Francis Higbee later testified that mobs loyal to Joseph Smith were inciting violence against them, and the dissenters feared for their lives. The rule of law within Nauvoo had collapsed, replaced by intimidation, threats, and open hostility toward critics of Smith's regime. Fleeing under the shadow of potential assassination, the dissenters sought refuge in nearby communities such as Carthage. There, they began working with Illinois state officials to pursue legal action against Smith, whose control over Nauvoo had become increasingly authoritarian. In an effort to counter public backlash, the Nauvoo Neighbor, a newspaper aligned with Smith and the city government, published a special extra edition on June 21, 1844. It claimed the Expositor editors had left Nauvoo of their own accord and had not been threatened. This narrative directly contradicted the testimonies of those who fled, and served as a calculated attempt to deflect growing accusations that the city government had deployed extra-legal, mob-like tactics to suppress opposition. William Law later recounted that he and his associates were systematically threatened, harassed, and driven out of the city by fear, a forced exile rather than a choice. Their removal marked a turning point in the deepening crisis that would culminate in Joseph Smith's arrest. On June 21, 1844, Illinois Governor Thomas Ford traveled to Hancock County in response to the escalating crisis following the destruction of the Nauvoo Expositor Press. That same day, he issued a sharply worded letter to the mayor and city council of Nauvoo, directly condemning their actions. In his statement, Ford called the destruction of the press a very gross outrage upon the laws and the liberties of the people. Ford proceeded with, "There are many newspapers in this state which have been wrongfully abusing me for more than a year, and yet such is my regard for the liberty of the press and the rights of a free people in a republican government that I would shed the last drop of my blood to protect those presses from any illegal violence." This public rebuke made clear that the state government viewed the city's actions not just as improper, but as a serious violation of constitutional rights. Ford's reaction further fueled tensions and underscored the growing perception that Nauvoo's leadership under Joseph Smith had become dangerously authoritarian and lawless. Thomas C. Sharp went as far as printing in the Warsaw Signal, "War and extermination is inevitable. Citizens arise, one and all. Can you stand by and suffer such infernal devils to rob men of their property and rights without avenging them? We have no time for comment. Every man will make his own. Let it be made with powder and ball." LDS Apostle Dallin H. Oakes counters with, "The suppression of the Expositor was a legal but unwise action. The city council had authority under the Nauvoo Charter to declare nuisances and abate them, but the destruction of the press was a drastic measure that inflamed public opinion. The Nauvoo City Charter, granted by the Illinois legislature in 1840, gave the city council powers that were unusually broad for a municipality, including declaring nuisances and abating them. But this charter was exceptionally controversial because it essentially allowed Nauvoo to operate with a degree of autonomy that clashed with state authority. When the Nauvoo Council declared the Nauvoo Expositor a nuisance and destroyed the press, they were technically acting under their charter's powers. However, the state of Illinois and many outside observers argued that the charter's provisions conflicted with state law and constitutional protections, especially concerning freedom of the press and due process. In other words, while the Nauvoo Council acted legally under their city charter, that charter itself was in tension and arguably in conflict with Illinois state law, making the action highly contentious and widely seen as unlawful beyond Nauvoo's walls. Part 3. Smith's illegal actions. On the night of June 22, 1844, Joseph Smith fled Nauvoo with his brother Hyrum, Apostle Willard Richards, and bodyguard Porter Rockwell, seeking to avoid arrest amid escalating tensions. Before departing, he instructed his clerk, William Clayton, to burn or bury the minutes of the secretive Council of 50, aiming to protect sensitive information from potential enemies. Clayton recorded, "About noon pressed, Joseph dictated a letter to Emma. He appears much troubled about the disposition of the people. He said he would rather go to Carthage and die than be a means of the destruction of his people. He, however, advised me to get the papers and records of the kingdom and put them in a place of safety, and also to put the key of the Masonic Hall into the hands of Dr. Bernheisel. I accordingly went and took possession of the records and papers and buried them in my garden." William Clayton Journal, entry for June 22, 1844, published in an intimate chronicle, The Journals of William Clayton, edited by George D. Smith, Signature Books, 1995, p. 144. This action underscores the gravity of the situation and Smith's concern over the council's records. Smith's departure was met with criticism from some church members who felt abandoned during a time of crisis. Reynolds Cahoon reportedly confronted Smith, saying, "You always said if the church would stick to you, you would stick to the church. Now trouble comes and you are the first to run." Others, like Lorenzo D. Wasson and Hiram Kimball, accused him of cowardice, likening his departure to a shepherd abandoning his flock when wolves appear. Part 4. Smith on the run. In a letter dated June 22, 1844, Joseph Smith conveyed his reluctance to submit to arrest due to fears for his safety, stating, "But, notwithstanding this, we would not hesitate to stand another trial according to your Excellency's wish, were it not that we are confident our lives would be in danger. We dare not come. Writs, we are assured, are issued against us in various parts of the country. For what? To drag us from place to place, from court to court, across the creeks and prairies, till some bloodthirsty villain could find his opportunity to shoot us. We dare not come, though your Excellency promises protection. Yet, at the same time, you have expressed fears that you could not control the mob, in which case we are left to the mercy of the merciless. Sir, we dare not come, for our lives would be in danger, and we are guilty of no crime." Subsequently, in a letter dated June 23, 1844, Smith expressed a willingness to meet with Governor Ford under certain conditions. "But from the explanation, I now offer to come to you at Carthage on the morrow, as early as shall be convenient for you to escort us into headquarters, provided we can have a fair trial, not be abused, nor have my witnesses abused, and have all things done in due form of law, without partiality, and you may depend on my honor, without the show of a great armed force to produce excitement in the minds of the timid." On June 24, 1844, Joseph Smith and his brother Hyrum emerged from hiding and made their way to Carthage, Illinois, after intense pressure and accusations mounted against them. Under criticism from both followers and critics for abandoning the city, Joseph reportedly declared, "If my life is of no value to my friends, it is of none to myself," expressing a sense of resignation as he chose to face arrest rather than remain in hiding as a coward. Upon arriving in Carthage, the Smith brothers were charged not only with inciting the destruction of the printing press, a blatant violation of freedom of the press, but also with treason against the state of Illinois, stemming from Joseph's declaration of martial law in Nauvoo and the mobilization of the Nauvoo Legion. These charges would ultimately place them in the Carthage jail. According to the LDS's church newspaper Deseret News, underpinning the treason charge against the prophet was his declaration of martial law in the face of a threat of mob violence against the people of Nauvoo. Joseph Smith's legal involvement. Despite his initial hesitation and well-founded fears, Joseph Smith ultimately surrendered, driven by pressure, supposed loyalty to his followers, and perhaps fatalism. His decision to face the law, under assurances of protection, would prove misplaced. Within days, the treason charge would become a death sentence. Please watch for future videos, and thank you so kindly for watching. This is the Ex-Mormon Informant signing off for the day.